A ship is like a place that drives on the water. However, just like routine homes, sometimes ships perceive abandoned. They unless meeting with an accident, or cannot be recovered, or they are no extended fit for purpose, forgetting us with just the scale of their previous greatness. Number 15. The French aircraft carrier, Clemenceau, R-98, was once the dignity of the French Navy, serving as only their sixth aircraft carrier. Built this aircraft carrier in the early 1960s. It described the pinnacle of French engineering at the time. It originated comparable to the finest comparable ships of Great Britain and the United States. Lit Clem, as it was associated with those who sailed on it, served as France's protector for almost 4 decades, before approaching the end of its serviceable life. In 1997, it was exported to India to be scrapped, but anxieties about pollution caused by breaking the ship up saw it held up by the Indian authorities, and temporarily stolen by activists before it was permanently active for distribution by the British, who had deconstructed it in Hartlepool in the year 2010. Number 14. The MV Kalakala had a different and mysterious life. She was the luxury spirit of the future when she launched in 1935. Beautiful and delighting passengers who had never seen a ship of this model before. She was still a tourist fascination 30 years later when she was assassinated in Seattle, with only the city's Space Needle being better recognized as a landmark in the area. Louis Proctor of the Boeing Company, better known for producing planes, was responsible for the ship's unusual Art Deco design, with a flying bridge subdivision designed to resemble wings. At her height, she entertained a full live orchestra and dance parties. Predestinated, her uncommon design caused effects that discredited her integrity, such as poorly aligned engines, causing the same damage during operations. Her position degraded over time, and ultimately, she was beached in Kodiak in 1970. To become a shrimp processing unit, what remained of her was finally disposed of in 2015. Number 13. SS America was once recognized as the most stylish and impressive ship ever to fly in the American flag. Originally designated for wartime service under the name USS West Point. The large ship started life as a troop transport carrier but was reimagined as a gratification cruise liner. After the conclusion of hostilities, she navigated between New York and Europe with the luxurious staterooms of her interior providing convenience and luxury to her prosperous guests. By the 1980s her age was persuading and she was practically sold for scrap, but Thai investors had plans to change her into the waterbound 5-star hotel they paid for her to be induced to bear, who kept, but she ran grounded near Fuerteventura in a thunderstorm, with the tide disclosing her in half. Over the next 20 years, she gradually slipped under the waves. Number 12. Once there was a time when NATO commanders lived in fear of ships like the mighty Soviet cruiser Murmansk, but before it gets rusted shell implanted in the fjords of Norway. Murmansk was a stimulating Love-class cruiser, one of several were proposed for construction during diplomatic tensions during the Cold War with the time exceptional anti-aircraft inclinations. Missile technology proceeded faster than had been anticipated though, and the Sverdlovs became antiquated long before their time. Their Murmansk was sold for scrap, she was being dragged to a breaker's yard, and she displayed wedged in a fjord. The rusting cargo became ugly. Moreover, toxic poisoning waters as it broke down. So an unnatural dam was built approximately while it was considered apart piece by piece. Number 11. The Swedes country in Europe was contracted for the construction of the MV Cherry Venture, a cargo ship, but she spent most last of her life on the beach in Australia. That might seem like fun for a person, but not so much for an extensive cargo ship. The Cherry Venture ran grounded onto a beach in Queensland in 1973. Due to a compound of high winds and poor planning, the ship was not conducting sufficient cargo, which lifted sitting too high in the water and lying to drifting. Various struggles to refloat the container followed throughout the next 20 years, but none succeeded. But ultimately in 2007, it was concluded it was too threatening to leave the ship where it was any more abundant, because asbestos was in the engine had become presented, and so it was devastated and then buried. Number 10. Museum as World Discoveries, a shipwreck you can still go and revisit today in a scenic bay near the Solomon Islands. Just don't anticipate there to be looking her best. She's stayed there since April 2000. In addition, time hasn't been pleasant to her. The Germans built the Extravagance cruise ship in 1974. Moreover, it navigated the world happily for a quarter of a century, before it struck an undiscovered rock formation near the islands, and got penetrated. This was exceptionally sad, as she'd endured a full refurbishment in 1996, to make her look as good as new. When the ship struck the rock and was critically damaged, the captain heroically survived to steer her into the bay, where all passengers escaped securely. Locals then jumped on board and looted everything on the cruise right there, producing the damage of safeguarding the world discover too high to be worth the inconvenience. Number 9. When the Arctic Discoveries was first elected, as a Canadian research vessel designated the A.D. Cameron in 1958, the builders could never have known it would play such an extraordinary role in the Chronicle, a sturdy and robust vessel. She was awarded the name we know her avoided in 1988 when she was being used by an infamous scam and marine engineer Tommy Thompson. Thompson was convinced that he had found the wreck of the SS Central America, a cargo ship that sank in 1857. While loaded with gold from the California gold rush. Thompson was honest about his invention, but he did not want to share it with the people he encouraged to pay. He restored millions of dollars worth of gold from the seafloor and then left with it, discarding the Arctic Discoverer and the method. He was ultimately found in 2015 but pretended to no longer occupy any gold. The Arctic Discoverer hungered in Florida until it was failed in 2013 to breakers who demolished it a piece at a time. Number 8. The final monarch of France, Napoleon III, had other approaches for history. Former naval harbor when he commanded it to be built, but it's finished up as the final resting position for a whole host of the unwanted rusting merchant and military capillaries. This unconventional sea cemetery restrains a full-sized cruiser, as well as many smaller ships, all of which are systematically used as target exercise by the French military. They have taken quite a battering over time, and one by one, they are dropping below the waves. Before long they will all be gone permanently. Number 7. Chittagong Shipbreaking Guard is the biggest in the world, dealing with a fifth of the entire world shipbreaking business and contracts over 200,000 people in Bangladesh. It all originated with one ship in 1960. The Greek vessel MT Alpine converted stranded in Chittagong, after a thunderstorm and couldn't be retrieved or salvaged. Chittagong Steelhouse suborned the stricken ship in 1965. Furthermore said about scrapping it, the work proved productive, and a completely new Bangladeshi industry was displayed. More than 40 different organizations operate in the area of the shipyard, which enhanced a tourist performance until the administration stopped letting foreigners get too close to it because of the hazardous conditions bounded. Number 6. Friendly seems like a strange name for a retired battleship, but that is the title that was given to this former Soviet Guard ship, which was approved and constructed in 1973. From 1975 beyond, Friendly was part of the Baltic Fleet, cruising throughout Europe and retaining the peace. The well-traveled and regular vessel had more than realized its departure. By the season, 2003 came with the Russian Navy violating her at scrap price to separate investors. The investors required to turn her into a museum, or probably even an expensive nightclub with permanent moorings in Moscow. Nevertheless, sadly their plans fell through. Beneficial spent 13 years on the Khimki Reservoir, while struggles were made to betray it again. And during that time vandals and looters targeted her frequently, damaging the hull in the process, sinking and exceeding redemption. Friendly was cut into scrap metal and predisposed in April 2016. Number 5. Creating a huge ship out of concrete doesn't seem like an exceptional idea. Moreover, it didn't work well in training unless, but you have to appreciate the Chinese for trying it. China rehearsed with concrete chips in the 1970s when there was a deficiency of steel in the country, and the decision was good. She measured 345 feet in length and was the longest concrete ship ever formulated when she was launched in 1973. However, almost a year later, she had been abandoned on a riverbank after working costs declared too high to be practical. The government had no further use for her, but visitors loved her. She was a popular sight for photographers for the 40 years she outlived there, and some people even lived in her concisely. Number 4. On the Namibian coast, northern part of the Atlantic coast, 1,300 feet from the shorelines of the Atlantic Ocean, dreams the slowly rusting wreck of the Edward Bolin shipwreck, exposed to the elements. The story of the Edward Bolin shipwreck inaugurates, in Germany in October 1890, when she launched from Hamburg as a trading vessel and became the first steam-powered ship to transportation and mail between Germany and West Africa. She was managed for a difference in trade and cargo, purposes for the bulk of her 19 years of assistance, and she was laden with supplies to support diamond mining activities near Conception Bay when she appeared with her fate. With her crew distracted by unseasonal fog, she ran grounded on a sandbank on September 5, 1909. Her crew was uninjured, and all the cargo was unloaded, but the ship was stuck fast and couldn't be towed to protection. Number 3. The IX-529, better known as the Sea Shadow, was a top-secret United States defense project. The concept was to take the technology that had been successful in stealth jets, like the Lockheed F-117 Nighthawk, and connect it to seafaring vehicles. The concept never quite caught on. Sea Shadow sailed out of California on a distributed mission in 1984. Geared for computerized operations with a skeleton crew on board. It remained to sail in secret everywhere the Cold War, with its existence only converting public knowledge in 1993. When it was forcefully retired, only one model of this ship was ever formulated, and it was reflected to be a failed prototype. Complicated struggles to sell the vessel failed, resulting in it relaxing at the San Diego Naval Station until 2006. Finally being scrapped in 2012. Number 2. You can tell that the SS Airfield was created to last. Even now, when it's over a century old, and balanced down with trees that have developed into its abandoned frame, it somehow visits afloat. The SS Airfield is a long-standing resident of Homebush Bay in Australia, where it ended a life that originated in 1911 in Great Britain. She was a coal-carrying steam-powered ship that struggled hard for over 50 years, including as an auxiliary troops support ship through the global struggle in the 1940s. She survived that punctuation, and continued to deliver coal until 1972. When the time decisively came for her to retire, ordinarily boats sent to Homebush Bay or to be scrapped, but SS Airfield was kept as a display vessel. Her unintended onboard forest has displayed a tourist fascination. Number 1. You can understand just by looking at the old Al-Mansour, which explicates, as the Victor was once a gratified and wealthy vessel. That's no astonishment. It was built for $30 million and associated with former Iraqi dictator Saddam Hussein. Oman was the pride of Hussein's fleet, 400 feet long and restraining incredible riches within even the tap wherever gold-plated. Hussein was paranoid. He had a secret escape tunnel built into the ship, which would have taken him immediately to a submarine launch pod in an emergency. U.S. bombing raids seriously damaged the ship during 2003. However, this ship didn't sink, it was exceeding salvage. Al-Mansour was dragged to bars to be scrapped in 2005. It may have been called Victor, but it suffered in the conclusion. Subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications and you will be the first to know when a new video comes out. Thank you for watching and see you soon.